All right, again, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's Food for Thought program. The League magazine theme this month is on contemporary issues, and really the League was challenged to put together a magazine that discussed the emerging and persistent concerns that don't oftentimes fit neatly into one theme, such as infrastructure, housing, and the like. In this edition, we cover demographics changes, PFAS, employment trends, and there was a main feature on the unhoused population, the homeless population across our state and facing our communities. And as part of our call for member stories and member information, we issued a call for input on this topic, and we received a dozen or so responses. And it affirmed that the most sure item facing our members is that everyone is experiencing some degree or concern regarding the unhoused population across our state. And it's really a matter of scale, scale of challenge, scale of resources, the ability to respond. And so today we've got two speakers joining us to give us both a macro statewide view and we'll finish with a local boots on the ground lived experience with a former mayor. So first up today, we've got Michael Bassford, who was appointed by Governor Evers to be the current director of the Interagency Council on Homelessness in 2019. This followed the creation of the Homelessness Interagency Council in 2017, where there would be a full-time director to lead the activities of the council and coordinate implementation established by the ICH. So I'm going to kick it to Mike, and he's going to begin to talk a little bit about his role, his observations, and the work that he's been doing on the issue of homelessness. So thanks everyone for joining us. And Michael, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
Thank you very much, Zach, and thank you everybody for jumping on today. It's always a pleasure to work and provide information for the folks over at the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Just a little about myself. Yes, I have served as the director for the state of Wisconsin's Interagency Council on Homelessness since May of 2019, when I was appointed to this position by Governor Evers. Before that, I spent 13 years as associate director at Housing Initiatives in Madison. What they do is they provide permanent supportive housing for people who are experiencing homelessness who also have severe mental illness diagnoses. During that time, I administered about $1 million a year in HUD continuum of care funds for rental assistance. And I also helped property manage 151 units the agency owns in the city of Madison. And during that time, I helped about 400 people go from homelessness into permanent housing. So it's with this it's through that lens that I have made some observations and working on providing policy to prevent and end homelessness as we know it in Wisconsin. So the homelessness situation in Wisconsin, I think by now it should be very evident that there is a growing crisis of homelessness. And it's not something that just happens in Madison and Milwaukee. This is happening in every corner of the state, north, south, east, west, urban, suburban, rural. And while there are kind of different types of flavors of homelessness from community to community, my largest or my most solid observation during all of this is that the biggest difference really is in scale, or the thing that they have most in common is scale. In that there are counties and communities that are experiencing homelessness for the first time in a long while, that they may that things are a lot different than what they used to be because of the current climate. The homelessness crisis is something that's not just exclusive to Wisconsin. This is something that's happening all over the country. It happens at Different areas of the country are experiencing increases at different rates. Some parts of the country have much larger homelessness issues than we do in Wisconsin, that's for certain. But everywhere we're seeing increases. And there's a lot of discussion all over the country on all at all levels of government on how we can address this. So I'm just going to give you some information first about how and why we're getting there, and I'll give you some ideas on how you can be part of the solution to homelessness. So first and foremost, our largest concern is the increase in unsheltered homelessness. These are people who are not in emergency shelters, that they are sleeping on the streets or sleeping in tents or in encampments or sleeping in cars. The the way that we count, one of the ways that we count homelessness is through a process called the point in time count. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires that all communities do a point in time count on the last week of January, and or the fourth week of January is what they do. The fourth Wednesday of January is when we do this in Wisconsin. In 2021, in 2022, they counted 301 people during the night of the last Wednesday of January, as experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Wisconsin, and that was again all over the state. That number grew to 458 in 2023. In 2024, it grew up to 568. So in the space of 2 years, we've seen a near doubling of unsheltered homelessness in this state. And that is very, very concerning. I know from experience that unsheltered homelessness is bad for your health. It is something that adversely affects everybody that experiences it. It is trauma. It is, and that should all be addressed as part of our solution process. Um, and how we get there is through many different ways. There is a substantial lack of proper investment in solutions to homelessness. And our largest challenge to preventing and ending homelessness as we know it is the lack of affordable and available housing. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, in a state of 5.96 million people, we have 191,000 households that are right now, their income levels are considered extremely low income. That is households that are making 30% or lower of the median income. 72% of extremely low income households are what is known as severely cost burdened, meaning that what is considered affordable housing is housing that doesn't cost more than 30% of your income. But 72% of those extremely low income renters who are severely cost burdened are paying 50%, 75% of their income and even up just on housing alone. So what is extremely low income? For example, in Wausau, a household with two people who are at 30% of the median income are making $23,750 or less in their income. So everybody that has some kind of Social Security supports, SSI, SSDI, they are all extremely low income. And the units that are available for this population is a situation that's becoming worse and worse. In 2021, the National Low Income Housing Coalition reported that Wisconsin was 119 and 57 units short of what is needed for this population. In 2023, that number grew to 126,726 units short. And in 2025, the number is now up to 128,340 units short for this population. In addition to it, there is a study that was done in 2020 by the Government Accountability Office for the federal government. And that study says that for every $100 increase in median rent, a 9% increase in homelessness rates happen. How does that look in Wisconsin? Again, going back to Wausau in Marathon County from 2020 to 2025, the HUD's two-bedroom fair market rate increased from $777 to $1,054. That is a 26% increase over 5 years. So the cost of housing is going up greatly. We are falling short of number of units that are available for rental for households that are extremely low income, and that the vast majority of those folks are severely cost burdened. Um, we have done things over the last few years that have invested in more and better affordable housing. Um, uh, quite a lot of funds went into from ARPA went into a program called the Neighborhood Improvement Fund. Um, many communities tapped into this to be able to use for more sheltering and more affordable housing units. And in 2023, during the budget process, three programs were created through WIDA. It was created through a bipartisan process. And those programs are the Infrastructure Access, the Restore Main Street, and the Vacancy to Vitality programs. And it's funded through a $525 million revolving loan fund. So for the rest of my time, I'll talk a little about some of the things that I think that you can do in your communities to address this crisis. First of all is investing in affordable housing development. And a good case study of that is seeing what's happening in Baraboo. They committed $5.5 million to a project called Driftless Lofts, which is a planned 56 unit lower income development with 2 and 3 bedroom units. The city council approved that in March, and they're working with the Baraboo's Community Development Authority on this project. It's a $17 million project. There will be private and public funding going into this as well. Other private and public funding. The second thing that I would want to recommend to you is to review and revise your local housing and homelessness plans or develop them if they don't exist. Consider as part of this updating your local zoning codes. I know that one of the things that frustrate me when I go and do community visits is where I'm talking with people who want to build affordable housing or build sheltering and cannot do it because a lot of what they're looking for is not a conditional use or a permitted use in the city zoning code. In fact, they don't even get mentioned. So that is something I would certainly uh, want you to do. And a really great case study. I know he's going to talk about it, so I'm just going to briefly mention it so I don't steal all of his thunder. But what the city of La Crosse and La Crosse County did in developing Pathways Home is an excellent example of this. This is not just a community coming up with a plan, but a community partnering with the county on a regional basis, addressing the issues of homelessness in that community. But you'll hear more from that. One thing that I think is very important is that your community, your municipalities partner with your local continuum of care organizations um, and your local homelessness and housing coalitions. HUD organizes Wisconsin into 4 COCs, one for Milwaukee County, one for Dane County, one for Racine County, and one for the balance of state for the remaining 69 counties. This um, this set up in the balance of state continuum of care. They have 21 local coalitions that address homelessness on a local basis. Partnering with those COC and coalitions with staff, including folks from the police department, your planning department, and your school districts. That communities that do that, like Madison, Milwaukee, and La Crosse, um, have a very excellent um, connection between the municipalities and the homelessness systems. So I would definitely recommend that you do that. I would also have a select municipal staff to lead your local homelessness response. Madison has somebody in Milwaukee, have people in community development that are tasked to be leaders in their local coalitions. La Crosse set up a homelessness coordinator. He's now leading their local coalition. Um, and Wausau is another excellent example of the police being very involved with the local coalition. And then finally, I would recommend that you talk with your legislators about what your needs are. I'm sure you'll probably hear that one of the largest barriers for communities to do this is capacity and funding and investments from Madison, which haven't really happened a whole lot over the years. We've been very reliant on federal funding for homelessness programming. The state of Wisconsin invests roughly $4 million a year for statewide programming for homelessness. $4 million is a lot of money, but when you compare it to what our neighbors are doing, it's just really a drop in the bucket. The state of Michigan has invests $19 million a year. Illinois, it's $290 million a year. And in Minnesota, they're on year two of a $2.6 billion commitment to invest in preventing and ending homelessness in that state. Uh, in the governor's executive budget, Governor Evers has proposed an increase of $19 million a year for direct programming for homelessness and about $240 million a year in what I would call homelessness adjacent programming. That's programming that has other purposes, but can be used to help people that are experiencing homelessness. And I'm at time now, so I think I will leave it at that.
Thanks, Mike. Just a reminder to folks that the Q&A is open for questions or any comments that may come up as you go through hearing the presentations today. I don't see any as of now, so we'll go ahead and continue with our program. We're going to switch over to a familiar face to many of you, I'm sure, and that's former Mayor Mitch Reynolds. We can say former because it's very fresh in the former sense. He concluded last week as his term of mayor in La Crosse, which he began in 2021. He was elected as a newcomer to political office, so I'm sure if a few of you find yourselves in that camp this time around, Mayor Reynolds could be a good resource for you. He spent some time, I did a little bit of background digging here, Mayor, so I'm just going to share it because I learned some things that you originally were born in Michigan, spent some time elsewhere in the country before coming to Wisconsin. Won't hold it against you. I won't ask for your favorite sports teams because you've been here for a little while now, so you're fully assimilated. But he's also holds an undergraduate degree in history from UW-La Crosse and an MBA from Viterbo. So thanks for joining us, Mitch. We'll go ahead and kick it over to you to share your insights and perspectives.
Great, Zach. Thanks. And it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for asking me to join in on the conversation today. Certainly an honor to be part of this presentation with Michael because he's been a guiding light for our community on issues of homelessness and really has helped us identify a path forward. So I am just going to give you a brief overview of the background and challenges with homelessness in our community. I'll talk a little bit about what we worked on as solutions and how we got to developing a long-range strategy. I'll give a brief overview of that strategy and then probably try to highlight some important aspects for success. And just as a disclaimer, as the former mayor, I'm not speaking for my community as such anymore. So the things that were in place up till a week ago, so I'm speaking from that vantage point, and it's up to the new leadership to carry that forward. So as many communities have faced, COVID led to a large numbers of homeless individuals, especially in our downtown. And when I entered office in April of 2021, the community really did seem to be overwhelmed and searching for some immediate answers. And additionally, a lot of providers had expressed interest that they were just not able to locate individuals to provide services to. And so we started to look for a centralized space for our homeless, unsheltered individuals to live. And we have an emergency shelter at the Salvation Army, and Catholic Charities runs an overnight shelter during the winter months. But that was not even close to covering the capacity that we needed. So started looking for a centralized space, even if it was outdoors, so that people could go live without disruption, even if it wasn't a tent or something, but also have a space where folks like Gunderson's street medicine team and others could find everyone and provide medical services and other things. So one of our parks, and we have 47 parks, but one of our parks, Huska Park, emerged as a pretty obvious option for a lot of reasons. Among the reasons was that it was really close to downtown and close to the centralized services that are available in our downtown, including those that come at the county building. Generally speaking, it's illegal to camp in parks in La Crosse at that point. I decided that we were going to curtail that enforcement at that one park. In order to facilitate movement and facilitate this at the time, what we thought would be a decent way to, again, have a centralized location for individuals to live, to provide services. And it seemed like it was the best of the worst option. As soon as we did that, people started setting up tent sites in Huska Park, and the numbers quickly increased. And by the end of the summer, there were 150 people living in Huska Park. And then still a lot more in the areas of the city. So during this time, just like everyone else, we were working on ways to distribute ARPA funds. And homelessness and housing emerged as a primary concern for the city council. And so when we began allocating funds, which those funds are finally approved in February 22 for allocation, there was a couple $1 million that were allocated towards housing, well, more than that actually, for homelessness and housing. During that time, we also hired the homeless services coordinator that Michael talked about, and that was in November of 2021, knowing that we needed someone from the city's perspective to guide this effort, to be able to coordinate all the efforts of the service providers so that we could be effective at providing services. So one of the problems that we faced was that we weren't really sure how to effectively spend the funds that we had to be effective over the long term. And in the meantime, we had short-term critical situations of people living outside. We rented a hotel for the winter, spent money on that. We looked at purchasing some buildings, the headquarters for the Chamber of Commerce, which was a miserable failure. The winter came and went. We didn't have anything in place. In 22, we were looking at buying an old motel. We looked at pallet homes. We looked at locally built sheds that people could live in. Eventually settled on establishing Huska Park as a legal campground. And then people started living there. All right. So while this is all happening, we're also having weekly meetings with all the service organizations, all the ones that are addressing some issue of homelessness, whether it be through veterans organization or our local COC, Balance of Care. I'm sorry, the COC organization, the YWC. There's a bunch of organizations that work on homelessness in our community. So I started convening these weekly meetings, and we're trying to come up with long-term strategies for addressing homelessness. And well, I tell you what, at right about the summer of 2022, I believe it was, when Michael came on one of his visits to La Crosse. And I remember distinctly, and Michael, you might remember this as well. We were having on a call in my office, and I don't remember who we were on a call with, but you were in my office. Brian was there, the homeless services coordinator, and you were describing us the situation of the number of people who were camping out, who were sleeping out in the city of La Crosse. And you were just, I think appalled is the right word. But more to the point, it was devastating from your perspective to see how many people were living in the condition that they were living. And at that point, we were still in Huska Park. It devolved into a situation of lawlessness and violence, and we finally had to clean it up. We gave a deadline to vacate. The key this time is that there was no place to go. We had set up nothing else to go to. Thought about buying more buildings, and that's right about the point in time when the county administrator and I got together and determined that the only way that we were going to make headway on this issue was for our organizations to work together with intention and take the lead on homelessness response in our community and region. And I said this multiple times in meetings, is that we needed the grown-ups to drive the bus. So we set about to create a plan for a long-term approach, and this happened throughout 2023. Key things that we knew we needed. We needed it to be data-driven, right? How many homeless individuals do we actually have? How many are, a lot of folks talking about how homeless folks, they come from out of town and they can come and settle in your city. And we needed to know actually how many people that was. What are their specific needs? What are the specific needs of individuals? How can we quantify that? We also had this establish agree on an ultimate goal. And we did that. We got our service organizations together. We got people who are other stakeholders. We had people with lived experience. And we determined that functional zero in homelessness was an attainable goal. And it was not realistic to think that we could simply end homelessness. We had to address it in a pragmatic, realistic way. And that was in a way to reach functional zero. In other words, we were going to have an immediate response for people who wound up being homeless. We assumed that there was going to be some level of homelessness, but once they became homeless, we had a system in place to address that. We also needed to understand just exactly what resources were in place. I mean, HUD is one thing, but housing authority, there's veterans service. What are those exactly? So we had to quantify that, and nobody really had that information for us. And we needed to continue to ensure that the county and the city were the leaders in this. We were going to be leading, we were going to be held accountable, there was going to be transparency, and we needed to focus on these organizations, these grown-up organizations, the ones that are going to be here 200 years from now. We had to focus on solving the problem, because that's what local governments do. We solve problems. We provide services. We're not out there to take, I'm not going to dish on service providers, but oftentimes their perspective is there's a pie, and they're looking for their biggest slice of pie. The city and county governments, what we do is we affect change and we provide services. I say we, they now, but you know what I'm saying. So this is how we came up with the Pathways Home Plan. And I asked this to be shared in the chat. So I think that I'm assuming that will be done. I don't have the chat up, but.
Yes, sir, it's in there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So I don't have that up to show you, but I think that is crucial for folks to take a look at that and see what it is exactly. And one of the things that we had on there is again, with the goal of transparency and accountability, we have a dashboard that that shows exactly the numbers of people that when we're out counting all the time, there's interaction. We have a homeless outreach team, a HOT, that goes out and talks to people and sees what their needs are and understands where they are at ground level and understands how we can help them and what sort of management they need. Michael talked about housing as the key element in homelessness, and there's no disagreement there. One of the things that we discovered is that the thing that was most likely to ensure success for any individual is the likelihood of making sure there is effective case management. We found out that the vast majority, and it was 90, I think only 2% of individuals we've identified on our list do not need case management at all. And the rest do. 4% needed 24/7 case management or surround care. 2/3 needed anywhere from, significant case management to moderate case management. So these are individuals that need someone to help them succeed. And that was one of the key parts that we're missing all the time. We had people that had income. Some had Social Security, some had jobs. It was less about that and more about having a support network of individuals there to help them succeed. So that was part of our plan. How could we provide that case management? How was it? And the county beefed up efforts. La Crosse County jumped in. They hired case managers. They added people there. They re-signed folks because of how crucial that need was. Among the things that we needed to do, however, was make sure that we were not going to permit outdoor living, because there is a certain segment of the population that simply desires to have that. They want to live just like all the rest of us, right? They want to live on their own terms. You and I want to live on our own terms. Their own terms meant living outside. And frankly, there's just folks that are like that, and they need help as well. But we decided that part of our plan was we were not going to permit outdoor living. But the city council ultimately approved a camping ban on all public property a little bit before we were ready for them to do that. But ultimately, it helped and it worked. And we're still working. And if you look at the numbers on our Pathways Home dashboard, you will see that we still have significant numbers. But we are getting people lined up for housing on our own list. And Michael can talk about coordinated entry and how the HUD requirements for getting people signed up, getting people on a list and coordinating them with housing sometimes doesn't go well, because the people that are highest on the list for HUD don't necessarily fit into the housing that you have. For the key to our partnership with Pathways Homes, developing our own list, so we could identify the housing that we have with the people that we're trying to serve and coordinate those two. I don't want to go in too long. I know there may be some questions, but one of the things that was key to this is leadership from both organizations, from La Crosse County and the city of La Crosse. You have to be, if you are a leader in your community, whether you're a mayor or a village board president, whatever the situation is, wherever you are, whatever you're homeless, whatever the scale of homelessness you have within your community, you have to be the one to move it forward. You have to get staff to buy in, especially emergency services, library staff, which is absolutely critical because that becomes a de facto day shelter for homelessness. Transit folks, if you have a transit system, anybody in a forward-facing role, especially those directly serving the residents. And you're going to get noise from the community. They want instant solutions. And Michael can tell you, and everybody who works within homelessness can tell you, there are no instant solutions. This crisis did not begin overnight. It did not evolve over a day or 2 days. This has been decades in the making. This all goes all the way back to the 2008 housing collapse and before that. This is the opioid crisis. This is the depletion of mental health care accessibility for so many people. So, but people want solutions, and you have to constantly beat the drum that this is a long-term strategy. As one of the people that helped us develop it, director of our health services, Jason Witt, said, "We're not developing a solution; we're developing a system. This is a long-term plan developed over several years to really engage and focus on long-term solutions for homelessness. Look at the situations that are driving homelessness in the first place. And one of the things we identified is that there are a lot more resources in our community than we knew of. They just were not being utilized properly. They were not being used in a coordinated way because of the competition among service providers. So I don't want to go on too long because I know that I think I probably passed my time, but I just wanted to if you have an opportunity, again, the link to Pathways Home is in the chat. Take a look at that. It's a broad pathway, like Pathways Home, right? It's a broad look at how you can develop a strategic plan to move forward over a long period of time and develop a system. Among the things that it takes is, again, constant continual leadership. It takes the city and the county taking the lead. It does require people to run this thing. The county hired a project manager to work on this continually. You need to have community buy-in. The county and the city will continue to look for partners to help fund housing and things like that. And there's a ton of other pieces there that I won't go into, but take a look at it. And I encourage you, if you have more questions, to reach out. Our folks in La Crosse County have been very busy answering questions from around the state, and they're happy to spread the wealth and to help your communities work on these issues as well. So I'll leave it there.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. And both of you have talked about a number of community partners, recognizing that alone you're not going to get very far, right? There was a mention about libraries and engaging the library constituency, and I think that's been long regarded as a key stakeholder that sometimes folks might overlook. So if you've got any other perspectives, feel free to take yourself off mute and share anything on that. We did have a question that popped into the chat too about determining the unsheltered population. They seem to be covered there, but another stakeholder oftentimes is school districts. And there's a report I'll share at the end of our call. Anything you've got to say about kind of working with the school district coordinator, school district stakeholders?
Yeah, and I'll jump in there because that's one of the things we made sure we did right away is and when I talk about those meetings that I organized to engage the various service providers, the school district had representation there because our school district, and this is not within the last 5 years or 10 years, this has been ongoing, that there's always children who are facing homelessness in some kind of way. Rarely do we have unsheltered children. It does happen, but very rarely. Typically, what we have is folks who are experiencing some level of homelessness. They're with their folks. They're couch surfing. Sometimes are surfing rather, sleeping in basements in different places. But it's important to get that perspective from the school district and to make sure that they are there, that we are working, that communities are working with their school districts because, again, those are people on the front lines and they're experiencing the issues related to homelessness in the classroom.
Excellent. We have another question in the chat specific to working with the landlord population and the contingency that oftentimes is providing housing. And if you've had any effective strategies that you employed to convince or to motivate landlords to rent to a previously unhoused population. Certainly affordability is a factor there, but anything to say on that contingent?
So I rank landlord engagement as one of the most important things that I get to do here. Um, and not only to convince them about the need to rent to this population, but also to come up with some solutions where we can bring in more landlords to participate in these. States and communities around the country are doing this. I think the best example that I have is from the state of Washington. They have a landlord risk mitigation fund. And what that is that they will allow landlords to sign up for it. And if you do, you have to take people in to a unit that that have some kind of rental assistance, like a housing choice voucher or Section 8 voucher, or other types of rental assistance that are available out there. And in the event that things go south with this tendency and you have units get damaged, as a former property manager myself, I've I've certainly experienced that a lot. I've seen a month's maintenance budget go up in smoke with fixing a single unit. And so giving having that funding available, and they've given up, I think, since 2019, $6 million in these funds to help make landlords whole when these unfortunate situations happen. There are also communities that use landlord funds for things such as signing bonuses, where if you bring somebody in who has rental assistance, that you get a check, and also funds that will help on the front end of bringing a unit up to what they used to call in HUD world the uh, housing quality standards. Bringing your units up to code is a great way to very quickly increase the affordable housing stock. It's part of, again, Governor Evers has in his executive budget a $2 million per year risk mitigation program for landlords and housing quality standards. So yes, it's have your communities connect with your with your apartment associations. There are regional ones around the state. I've been to meetings in Brown County and Milwaukee County and Racine County and Dane County with landlords and other places as well. And there's a lot of excitement for something like that. And so hopefully we can get that. We've put it in every budget that we've released, and it always gets taken out by the legislature, and hopefully that won't happen this time.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that we tried the landlord risk mitigation fund. We did that, and we had some success with it. We are also looking at under Pathways Home Plan having a managed lease program, so that in other words we would fund a and we would basically the city, the county, the Pathways Home team would sublet from the landlord, and then there would be guaranteed rent to the landlord. We would collect the rent on the front side. So there's a lot of other options as well.
Yeah, and silly me, I forgot to mention the only community in Wisconsin that is running a landlord risk mitigation program, as far as I know. And that's another hallmark of Mayor Reynolds' leadership.
That's excellent. And just a note on financing, at the May 7th legislative lobby day, there will be an opportunity to talk with your legislators about your specific issues. And it's a part of the league's legislative priorities in working with some of the other stakeholders that have been mentioned here, a la the counties association, and ensuring that our members are talking about it, because when you talk about these things as community needs, that's the first step in getting a look at potential financing and funding some of these things. There are some additional questions in the chat. One regarding ARPA funding. Was the La Crosse Housing Coordinator ARPA funded? Certainly it was not. Okay, great. So the county, was it the city city or county housing authority, Mitch, or the coordinator?
Okay, so the homeless services coordinator is an employee of the city of La Crosse. And I think originally, and I don't remember how we originally, what was the first, I honestly, it was a couple years back, so I'm not exactly sure how we arranged funding, but he's a regular employee of the city of La Crosse.
Right. Let's see, there's another question in here. If cities and counties have shared the cost of housing, affordable housing projects, and how can that happen? What funds can a city use now that ARPA funds are finished, and how's the experience of using TIDs for housing for low or severely low income population, presumably through a affordable housing extension at the end of the life of a TIF? Any comments from either of you on those pieces?
I mean, I'll just say that that's key, right? Use that 1 year extension, fund affordable housing. We worked with Scenario on a project that's I think grand opening is just in a few weeks, and the capital stack is really just incredibly diverse. It includes LIHTCs and just a bunch of other funding sources, including stuff from the city as well. Affordable housing is hard. It's not easy, right? It doesn't flow. So you have to have additional resources to be able to fund that. And it does require an investment. I personally believe you got to add all housing. And if the more market housing you add, the more affordable housing you'll have. But add affordable housing at the same time. So it is that TID extension is pretty critical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it's been a bit of a frustration for me. I mean, one of the things that I did before this job, I also served on the City of Madison's Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. And and the way that we did TID and TIF was usually for nice projects downtown. And then there are communities that will create a TID to tur to convert to convert cornfields into Walmarts. And when I see communities do that, that just absolutely frustrates me. I think TID and TIF are great tools that could be used to improve the access to affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All excellent points. Looks like we've come to the end of our Q&A portion here, or at least to what's been submitted. We've got a few more minutes to take those questions. I just wanted to point to a resource that a Common League partner on various research initiatives is the Wisconsin Policy Forum. And I believe just this morning, they released a report specific to student homelessness. And I know we didn't get too deeply into that here. I'll go ahead and have that link drop to the chat. But essentially, the April 2025 report acknowledged that student homelessness has reached a new high, at least in the more recent definition and capture of the data that that as of the research and the report with the data is 20,000 students are identified as homeless, highest number since the state began tracking in 2019, which is a 9% increase from the previous year. So even though student enrollment declined by 1%, there are some details in there in that the definition of homelessness and how folks are counted, and talks about the impact of the pandemic and some other contributing factors. So certainly something to take a look at in case you're interested in sitting down with your school district stakeholders. We talked a little about affordable housing here, and but I think the interagency collaboration is something that is really critical, that municipalities who have different scale and different level of resources or don't have, it's important that folks have the conversation. And I know that there's some dialogue about some challenges happening in certain parts of the state as it relates to folks leaving incarceration or maybe crossing state lines, that sort of thing. So it'll be important for for folks to really impress upon something that was talked about here, and that's for folks to sit down across the table from one another to talk about some of the key challenges and potential solutions, and be inclusive as possible with those stakeholder groups. There was a question in here regarding TID extension would be key to providing much more affordable housing. Households earning less than 50% of median income. Yeah, very good points. Yeah, without a doubt. And yes, there was a question if the league is supporting an extension from 1 to 3 years. That is definitely on the table, as I understand, in the negotiations regarding the TID amendments to the tax increment finance law here in Wisconsin. It's 50 years old this year, and so it's time to do some rejiggering of some of the rules and requirements. And this issue certainly crosses that thread. We've got a handful of minutes left. I want to give both of our panelists the last word here, and want to thank everyone for joining us. Who'd like to start with the last word on this very dynamic and topic that certainly doesn't live and die with a 1 hour webinar? And we encourage you to reach out to these two resources because they can and are more than willing to have conversation with you. Michael, you want to start?
Michael, go
It's
ahead.
been said that there's an ancient Chinese curse that may you live in interesting times. That's neither ancient nor Chinese, but it's been said. And we are living in very interesting times, and it's very unfortunate, particularly with a lot of chaos that is emanating out of Washington, D.C. right now. And it really puts into relief what is needed for all of us together here, and that is cities, counties, the state, the federal government, where they can, um, uh, should be cooperating together with the private sector, with the faith communities in your community, and this is really an all hands on deck issue, and it's not going to be solved if you bury your head in the sand and pretend that it's not happening in your area of the state. It is happening. Um, and I look forward to assisting communities as I have been since my time here. As I always say, please do consider me at your service. I put into the chat my contact information, and I hope to hear more from those on this call going forward. Thank you very much again for the time.
Yeah, thank you for Michael, for all the work you do. I mean, it's really is exceptional, and I do certainly again appreciate being included on the call today. I will say that I will echo what Michael said about the federal and state government needing to be a little bit more involved, or a lot more involved. I'm glad you mentioned the $2.6 billion housing initiative plan that Minnesota launched a couple of years ago while we were funding repairs on the baseball stadium. I think we need to reprioritize what our what who we're trying to serve and coordinate efforts of the state and federal government along with cities and counties, because frankly, cities and counties, local governments really can't shoulder the load all by ourselves. We just can't. And we need to really look at how we're evaluating, how we're addressing housing needs in our communities, but also how we're looking at mental health delivery systems and all of that. Those are pretty critical. It doesn't, by the way, help to have wild increases in costs of building with, tariffs and things like that. So I would just suggest that we not do those things. But yeah, I think that advocating on the state and federal level for additional resources, I think would be ideal. Thank you again for letting me be here today.
And I'd also like to take the opportunity to again thank Mayor Reynolds for his leadership in La Crosse during his term. Very dynamic. A lot was accomplished. We didn't agree on everything, and that's okay. But I'm very, very grateful for everything that you've done, Mayor Reynolds.
Very well said.
Thank you.
And some great lived experiences. So consider these folks as your resources. The league has a call out for session proposals for the fall conference. So if folks on this call have some of the ideas of their own or lived experiences, or would like to see a session on this come back before us in the fall, be sure to take advantage of submitting the proposal to the speaker forum. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's an important topic for us to keep top of mind and to keep top of awareness for our legislative asks amongst all the other matters that are causing community concern and contemporary issues. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.